All right, let me share my screen. Can everyone see that okay?
Yeah, we're good. Yep, we got it.
All right, excellent. So what I did here is I've just spun up a migration from a test Salesforce portal to a test another test Salesforce portal. And when you start with our app, the first step it takes you through is just connecting to the CRMs. So it'll go through an OAuth step, having you log into the system. It connects, and then it pulls in the schemas of the systems you're connected to. From that point, it asks you which objects you want to bring across. So there are certain objects that we natively support, and you can select from those. And then once it's selected, you get to the mapping piece here. So what you're looking at right now, these are all of the objects at the top of the screen included in this particular migration. So you can see all of your kind of native Salesforce object listed here. And our app has done some auto mapping for us. So on the left-hand side of the screen, these are mappings from the source portal. And then on the right-hand side, the matches on the target portal. If I go here to page 2, you'll start to recognize some of the names. So some really useful things on this screen is that we pull in the usage for you automatically. So for each field that we've got mapped here, you'll see how many records out of the total have a value for this field. So in my test data, I don't have any, what am I on, contacts? I don't have any contacts with the department, for example, but all of them have a title. If I want to see some of the sample data within this field, I can click on this little DNA icon, and that'll spin and think for a minute. And then it'll pull in 5 different values from a random 5 records for us. And you can keep clicking on that icon to get another 5 records. This is the first time I'm querying the data right now, so it does take a little longer the first time. But there you can see. So here are some of the sample values in the data, which usually helps people to kind of identify what it is they're looking at. Also, if you hover over the information icon, you'll get some more info about the fields here. So you'll get the field type, and then the internal name if it's a custom field. Let me move on here a little bit. In Salesforce, as you all know, there are some fields that you can remove from the layout. So if you ever see the eyeball with a line through it, it just means that it's an invisible field in Salesforce. So it's not on any layouts. It most likely means you're probably not using it. You can see here we started to get into some fields that are not mapped yet. So the mapping here is fairly easy to accomplish. If the field that you're trying to map to already exists, you can just click on Select Field, and you can choose from the target fields. If it doesn't exist yet, we've got a couple of options for creating it through our application. If it's a custom field, going to the custom fields option here is the easiest and quickest way to accomplish this. So it will show you all of the custom fields from the source portal, and you can select, deselect the ones that you want to include or exclude. And same thing here, you get the usage, field type, internal name. Let's say I did want to bring both of these fields over, but I want to rename this one, for example. I can just click Edit icon here. I instead want to say that this is, spell that correctly. There we go. And I have just set a default value for this particular field because it is a checkbox. And so this is what I want to name it when I create it in the target portal. So I'm just going to apply that and then click Create Fields. So that's going to go through and work on those 2 mappings for me, and we'll create the field in the target portal, the same as what the field type was in the source portal. and then it will map those fields for me automatically. If it was a native field that we want to create in the target portal, we can click on the unmapped fields there. And so let's say that I want to bring the contact ID, so the source ID, over to the target. I can from here also create a custom field. And let's say I want to create this as a text field. I can choose what the label is. So let's say it's legacy contact ID, which is my internal name. Enter a description if you want to. You can say this is an external ID. Choose the field length and hit apply. So that automatically now creates the field in the target Salesforce portal. So if I click on the field that was just created, hit apply, that has now mapped that field for me as well. All right, you can see the other custom field I created here before, favorite fruit, is now in here. And this is a drop-down field. So if I click on this little downward arrow, I can actually see the pick list values in here as well. So my source values, again, on the left, and the target values on the right. Now, a couple of things to point out here. If we wanted to choose a different option for the target portal, so kind of like a translation table, we could do that here. So you don't have to create them as they were in the source. You can choose different values. And let's say that the value you're looking for doesn't exist on the target side. You could choose to keep the original value if it's an unrestricted field, which will add the source value to the target in the field, but it will not amend your pick list options. So a couple of options there. You can also use the map dropdowns automatically button here, and that will take a look at the values between each system and do the best guess as to how they should be matched up.
So quick question, if I may, do you have functionality around dependent pick lists?
Sorry, say that again?
Do you have any functionality to help manage dependent pick lists?
No. So aside from just creating the fields in the target, we're not able to do the configuration to say this field is dependent on that field. We can only create the field, and then the configuration piece of that would have to happen in the target portal.
Okay.
Okay. All right. Looked at a few things here. These icons right here are complex mapping blocks. Let me show it to you here on phone number. So what we use these for is to create prioritization around how the fields enter the system. So as an example, this is a poor example, but just stick with me here. Let's say that we wanted phone number to go to phone number, but as a backup, if there wasn't a phone number, we wanted the fax number to go in to the same field. That's what we accomplished through this mapping. So if I adjust the order of the fields here at the top, according to descending usage, then it will look at the first one, see if there is a value for that particular record. If there is, it'll push that over to phone and ignore the rest. If there isn't, it'll look at the next field and see if there is a value and keep going down the list. We do type, or I guess organize certain fields together. So these complex mapping blocks you'll see for phone numbers, email addresses, websites, relationships or associations. And that covers the bulk of it, really. So you'll see kind of the same functionality pop up here with address, for example. Let me see if we have, no, only a single address field. If we did have like other mailing or other address or billing and shipping, where we wanted to separate between those, We could do that here as well. Let me go to accounts real quick and I'll see if there's an example. Yeah. So let's say that, in the source portal, we had billing and shipping information. If the record we're looking at, again, does not have a billing address here, then we'll take the shipping address and push that to the billing address. So again, it just makes it to where we can populate target fields with as much information as possible. Go back to contacts. There's a functionality that's available to our technical engineers within this particular interface, and that is through the little setup cog here. Let me go to another field to show a better example. Actually, the function is a better thing to show. So the function here, we can choose a dependency or a join if we wanted to. So we sometimes see situations where there are duplicate fields in the source system. So let's say we had title, but then there was also a job title field. And just through regular usage of a CRM, duplicate fields were created and data exists within both. That's a fantastic spot to use the function because that can set up a dependency mapping here. And that will allow me to, almost similar to a complex mapping that we just looked at, this allows me to take a look at two different fields and say, if there is value in this one, push it over. If there isn't, look at the next field. So we use this to kind of clean up source data. We have the join available. So this becomes really useful, especially I see this quite a lot with activities where one system will, for example, for a note activity, will have a title and a description of the note, whereas the target system might only have description or vice versa. And this allows us to join two different fields together and push it into one target field. And you can choose the separator, and the separator can be whatever you want it to be. Once you've set up all of the mappings that you need here, you can go ahead with the free sample and just run that. And the sample is going to randomly choose about 10% of the records to push into the target system. When we're doing Salesforce migrations, Salesforce has its own deduplication rules built in. So that is what will apply when that sample is run. And how duplicates are handled are going to be dependent on the target system. So if you're doing a migration into, let's say, HubSpot, for example, HubSpot will automatically deduplicate contacts based on email address. So when we push the sample across, HubSpot will merge those contacts together if they have the same email address. And so for that particular object, we don't have to worry much about duplicates. For the other objects, there are no native deduplication rules set up within our application. So if you have Apple Inc. as an account in the target already, and you have that same one in the source, and you don't have a deduplication rule set up in your target portal to handle cases like that, then duplicates will be automatically created through that process. But that said, if you are aware that you're in that situation and you need some deduplication rules to be set up for you, that is something that our technical engineering team can do on the back end. So as long as they know what the criteria is for detecting duplicates, they're able to configure that. So like I said, we migrate about 10% of the records during the sample. It is a completely random 10%. And once that's done, we provide you with a report. So I'm just going to click start the sample here, and this won't take long. It's pretty small databases that I'm using here. But in doing this, it'll show you kind of the order in which data is processed as well. Mark, I know you specifically asked about this piece as to, how do we make sure that records get related to each other and flow across in the right order. We basically always use kind of the same order. So we start with accounts or companies, or whatever object represents that type of record. And then we move forward with leads and contacts, then opportunities and deals, followed by that, any other kind of main entity records. So that could be like cases, for example. And once all the main or core entities are migrated, we then migrate activities and attachments. And once all of those records have been migrated, we then go back through one more time to find any records that had errored out because of a missing relationship, and we process those one more time. So that is regardless of if you're doing this through our application in this way, or if our technical engineering team does it on the back end, it will always kind of flow according to those same objects.
So are we able to set that sequence of object order? Or is it just determined?
It's just determined, yeah. And we've never had issue with it, especially because of that retry. Anything that's missed gets captured the next time.
So what if we set up, for example, we had 20 objects we were mapping and we had it all set up, but we wanted to run a trial with just 3 objects, just accounts and contacts. How do we set? Do we have to take those other objects out, or?
Yeah, so you would go back, you would go to the select objects tab and just deselect the other ones and then go back in.
Even if they've already been mapped? Or is it retain the mappings?
No, the mappings will stay there. You'll just deselect the objects that you want to include, and it'll go from there.
Yeah, is this kind of called one migration or one project that we're continuing to amend and update throughout the course of the project? Or?
Yeah, so every instance of a migration gets a unique ID. So this one is the ID you see here at the top, and this is unique to the systems you have connected to it. So if you're just working within one instance like this, I would just use this for unique portals you're connecting. If you're then wanting to do a migration to another portal, I would spin up a separate migration for that. So I just wanted to show this screen real quick. So you'll see the steps here in just a moment for how the records are migrated, but you can see here, this is the order in which they'll go across. So the users go in first because everything kind of gets related to a user account. Then accounts, contacts, leads. Then the pieces of data that are needed before opportunities can go in. So products, price book entries, opportunities, and then the line items. That's what opportunity product is. Cases, then your activities.
Now, question I have is you mentioned the ability to migrate attachments and notes.
Yep.
Do you have the ability to convert those into content and files for Lightning?
That's a great question. I know that we migrate those. So I know that we can capture that information from Salesforce and migrate it elsewhere because we do that regularly. I'm not quite sure if we can convert them to the same object in this target Salesforce portal. So I'll take that as a note and come back to you on that. I would imagine that yes, because we do support it pulling out of the system. So I would imagine we can insert it as well, but I'll just verify that with my team.
What about capability for migration of knowledge articles?
Yeah, we do support that. Yeah. It requires a custom migration. It's not part of our self-service application at this stage, although I think we will be adding that. But yeah, we've had several use cases where people have needed to migrate those. And
so when you say a custom migration, what does that entail or consist of?
Yeah, so the self-service migration is what we're looking at right now. So any user coming to our platform, this is what they will see. A custom migration means that you're working directly with a CSM on our end and a technical engineer, and they do the bulk of the work for you. So the mapping exercise that we just took a look at, they'll do that with you on the call to choose where everything should go. And from that point, they'll run the migration for you. So any customization that's needed, they will implement and take care of any special use cases. We also have like a mixed version of that, which we call guided migration, which means that you're still able to run the migration on your own through the wizard right now. Customizations, or if you need objects added to the migration that we don't natively support through our app, custom objects is a good example of that. Then that's something that we can implement on the back end. And when you refresh the screen, you'll see it here. So we can add customization to a self-service migration and still allow you to run it on your own. It's just a slightly separate process.
Is there a limit to the volume that the tool can manage? Say I've got 8 million contacts.
Haven't run into any limit. The only time we run into limitations, it has to do with the system we're migrating data into. So we see like API limits, daily limits that we hit. But in terms of the number of records that can be processed through the tool, there's really no limit that we've hit yet. And we have migrated millions of records for migrations. Yeah, I would be very surprised if we hit a limit that we couldn't surpass.
Yeah. Does the tool respect like bulk API limits, just in terms of daily limits there?
It does, yeah. So if we do a migration and we hit a limit, we pause the migration at that point, and it automatically continues within 24 hours to pick back up, or whenever that limit resets. So yes, it does.
I do have another question here before I have to run.
Yeah.
So in a scenario where your accounts are mastered in an ERP system, excuse me, and they have to go through that path, but we need to migrate everything that comes after it.
Mm-hmm.
How do we handle something like that? So it's almost like everything will be upserted against a key, not necessarily against an ID that we've migrated.
Yeah. So that will require a custom migration. And again, it's just a situation where you describe what it is that you need there. If you mentioned the doing that against an ID, if let's say you do a migration of accounts into a target portal, and you insert an external ID into a custom field, and you let us know, hey, I want to look up against that ID and use that for the associations, 100%, that's something we can do. Or any other criteria you have there, as long as it can be coded, we can do it.
So once that's coded, are we able to then execute it going forward?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's again the same situation where we can do kind of a mixture where the technical team can implement the customization, and then you can run it from that point. Absolutely.
Now, how does the system handle Apex errors, things along the lines of
hey Patrick.
Yeah.
Wait just a second. I'm gonna make sure Ben gets his other question answered before he has to drop.
That was my question. No, I think we're
okay. I thought you had two. Sorry. Cool.
Nope.
Yeah, I'm gonna have to drop in just a minute too. But how does the system handle Apex errors, things like row locks?
Sorry,
I can answer that. we ran into that a lot on our modern campus. So I mean, it fails, right? But we get
like validation errors.
Well, row locks. How are you managing this?
I'm not sure what those are.
Row locks is when the insertion of a record fails because a dependent field, a record is still held open by another batch.
I gotcha. So again, it's one of those retry situations.
Okay.
So we'll try the insert, go through the rest of the records, and then try it again. We do run into a situation occasionally where once we've done that second retry, There are still some records that are pending. And in that case, it's just a quick support chat to our team, and they'll do that one more time, or as many times as it takes to get it through. But honestly, I don't see a lot of that.
Okay. Have you done much in the way of migration to CPQ and billing systems?
Oh, Scott, you might know better than I do. Oh, he dropped already. You know, I'm not sure. So a lot of what we do is CRM migrations, and we do some database migrations as well. And we're building connectors all the time as people request it. I'm not sure about that particular use case.
Okay, my concern is, or question, and I guess it comes down to also you able to control batch sizes, because migrating into Salesforce billing or Salesforce CPQ can be extremely problematic due to the extraneous code that it has in place.
Yeah.
And I mean, often we have to set batch sizes very small. And how does it also manage things such as processing records when, say, the record inserts, but the background Apex code fails to fire properly? That might be the case of, like, a common one is with Salesforce billing, where a tax call to another system has failed, and it fails to process and update line items.
Let me.
We kind of ran into that on our campus, right? I mean, anything that's happening post insertion, it's really outside of Trujay's scope then at that point. So we had to manage those internally and just know what had to be reprocessed, so to speak.
Yeah, I mean, with Modern Campus, we had to have a lot of settings kind of adjusted in Salesforce and retries on our end. I mean, on the back end, which I've got open here, this is kind of our control center on this side. So we get all the logs for every single insertion, and if we notice that there are issues, and we'll see that within the failed and pending columns here, then that's something that gets separately investigated. And if it requires a remigration of just a handful of records, that's something we can do separate from the rest of the data. So your controls within the self-service UI are relatively limited because it's supposed to be used for non-technical users. Whereas we have complete control on the back end here. So if
are you able to change the batch size there?
Yeah, I'm going to just double check with my tech team, but I'm almost positive the answer is yes. Again, we can do custom scripting for everything that exists on the back end here. So I would be floored if they tell me we can't, but I'm going to just double check. All right. One other thing I wanted to answer was related to associations. Mark, I think this is something else you had brought up. It's just how do we know how to associate records together? And so everywhere you see a relation mapping, that's an association to another record. And let me go to contacts. It'd be a better example here. So relation account for the contact, which is the account the contact is related to. It's the we basically just take the foreign key and keep that same relationship going into the target system. The relations for each object are already set up for you. So you'll notice if we go to opportunities, we have the relations between, the opportunity and account, contact, campaign, etc. All pre-built. If you go into this, you may need to make slight adjustments. If we go in here, you can see like this needs to be adjusted. We want the business business user to go to business user. So we probably want to remove the rest of these. But the associations are pre-built and can be adjusted from here. All right, a note about kind of what we see on the back end. So I just ran that sample migration. You can see it right here. If I go into the records, I can get detailed logs of what happened with every record we attempted to push across. So I can see if it failed, why it failed. Like this one failed because there was a missing relationship there. And I can further look at the actual records. So I've got the source ID, the target ID it's going to. These are actual links, so I can go and look at the records. And then I can look at the actual record data here. So I've got all the data from the source record. It's got all the relations spelled out for me. I have what I've mapped and what I attempted to push into Salesforce, and then the message I received back from the system. So like I said, we've got everything logged here. Every single time we do a migration, a new instance is logged, and we have all the details from that instance stored here as well. We have the ability on the back end to filter data as well. So we can script a filter here. Let's see what else.
That's actually what I was going to ask. So if we're going to migrate accounts, but we're only going to migrate certain record types or a subset of the whole, that's something you guys have to do?
It is, yeah. We're working right now on adding filters to the interface, and we have the start of it. You won't see this icon when you use it as a user. We're currently working on this right now to get it implemented for our end users. But if you go in there today and you need a filter, it's just something you request through chat, and our team will set up on the back end. Yeah.
What's your average turnaround on stuff like that?
Sorry, what's the average what?
Turnaround time? Call it simple filter.
Yeah, those are relatively simple. If it's during regular business hours, it's definitely a same day exercise. Just depending on how busy the team is. Could be 5 minutes, could be a handful of hours. If it's a more complex use case, so maybe you want to migrate custom object that isn't supported, something like that. Of course, that'll turn into a few days, but something small like that, definitely a same day exercise.
But otherwise, when it goes for whatever object it's on, when it's going to insert that record and there's a lookup to something else, it's looking across from the source into the target, doing the same parenting, assuming that parent record has already been created.
Exactly. Yeah. It's programmed to already have the parent record inserted, but that's exactly it. So as we insert the records, we keep track of all the source and target IDs. We know where everything's gone, and when we're doing the association further along the line, we have the exact right ID that we need. If you're doing multiple samples, what we'll do is we'll migrate the 10% of the data, and then if you go to run another sample, we will automatically clear out the data from the first sample, and then run the next sample through. So that's not anything you have to handle on your end. Same thing if we do it on the back end, we go through that same process. Let me see what else I can point out here. Mark, I wonder if you just maybe want to take a look at the email you had sent to see if there's anything on there I haven't answered yet.
Yeah, I was just looking at that. Can you talk a little bit about two things? One is, so if we have, say, is there any capability to, I'll call it interrogate text values as they come across and look for certain maybe even regular expressions, something that needs to be further translated. My example would be if someone has embedded a URL into a comment or text field in Salesforce, but the URL is for that current source org. We want to translate that to the target. We've done that a number of times, just with scripting, but I don't know if that's capable through a formula or something here.
Yeah. So again, something we can do on the back end, but yeah, we have a lot of this is kind of sort of already built into the usage here, but yeah, you can trim, strip, replace, all of that good stuff. It's right now something for our technical engineers to manage. But we are working on, like I said, including that in the self-service interface.
Okay. If we go to rerun this, I mean, are you keeping track each time of kind of the ID to ID mappings?
Yeah.
Is that something we could query to have a file of, or does that work? I know you've given me the source and target stuff in the past. So
oh yeah. So when the migration runs, there's a report that gets generated that you can download. So let me just see here real quick. Yeah. So you'll get this. Of course, this was a sample, so a very small data set here, but you'll get a full export of what happened with every single record. If you download the reports here, it will give you the source and target IDs. And that's true for the sample migration. So similar to what we just looked at here. Let's take a look at here. So it'll be similar to this. I think it's almost exactly this export. So you'll have the source and target IDs. I can't recall now if you get that during after the full migration, but it is something we can provide. So we can export the records on the back end and send that over. Again, very quick exercise. Anyone on the team can do this. Get it over to you within a few minutes.
So if let's just take an easy example. We're bringing over accounts and contacts, and then there's notes or attachments or whatever that are associated with the contact. If we include those three objects in the migration, is it only migrating then? If we put a filter, let's say, on accounts and only brought over certain accounts, then is it only migrating those contacts? I assume for the accounts that got created, right? It's kind of a top of the food chain there.
So
I was wondering. I guess I was trying to figure out if we have to put filters on kind of each object all the way down that we want to migrate, or it probably depends on if there's a parent involved or not.
Yeah, that's exactly right. So like in the case of like a account and contact, if in the system you're moving data into, if you can create a contact without a company being required or account being required, then if the related account didn't get created, so it was filtered out, the contact will still be created. But if let's say an activity like a note, if you attempt to create a note without associating it to anything, that may fail depending on the system you're moving it into. So if the record you're moving in requires a parent record, it'll just automatically fail if the account wasn't included. If it doesn't require it, it'll create it unless you add a filter to that object as well.
So what do you see or recommend as the best practice if I've got, let's say 100 different objects I'm moving? Do you see people breaking that up into multiple migrations, kind of starting with first few objects and working their way down, or it can't just be one big migration, I would think?
I mean, honestly,
it could be, but
yeah, honestly, it is usually one big migration. So it kind of comes down to user preference. But the reason I say we kind of do it as one big migration is because all the records are usually, or all the objects are related to each other in some form or fashion. It often makes sense to just do everything at once. And in a case like that, I honestly would probably recommend a custom migration, because that gives us more flexibility on the back end to choose what you're migrating and when. So like if I started on the self-service side, if I started a migration, it would go through all of these unless I've specifically selected, like deselected some of them. Whereas if I am manually on the back end starting a migration, I have a lot of control over what I'm migrating and how. So if we have 100 different objects here, I can choose specifically which ones I want to bring over, how I want to manage those records. So for example, I have options here about my migration strategy, upsert, map. This is like to match a record against an existing record, to upsert only ones that had failed previously, etc. So a lot of control here that doesn't exist within the user interface. So if you're in a scenario like that, I would suggest doing it as custom. If you're wanting to do it on your own, as long as you make sure that with every instance you spin up, you are including the correct objects in it. So if your 100 objects are all related to users, you have to, of course, include users with every instance you spin up. As long as you do that, you're generally okay. But I would say that almost everyone would do that as a single migration.
Okay, and we looked at pick lists early on with that we're missing, and you can create those on the go. Do you do similar with record types, or do we have to create all those in advance?
Record types have to be created in advance, I believe.
Okay, makes sense.
Yeah.
And then do you have we're talking about a lot of, we probably have a number of custom options. Is there a standard hourly price for support like that, or is it very?
Sorry, pricing for support, is that what you're asking?
Yeah, is there a standard price for just support requests, or is it very?
Yeah, so if it's just a simple support request that really doesn't take much effort, that's just something that the support team will take care of for you. If we're getting into like 1, 2, 3 hours of work needed, the standard rate is $175, which is for customers just doing a one-off migration, which is a lot of the use cases we see. But we do have a partner program, and Scott can send you the details of that. It does include a discounted rate. And if you guys are going to be doing a lot of migrations, we can, of course, make amendments to that even further. But yeah, standard with no discount is $175.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah, we definitely are interested in the partner program with a number of things we got coming, and mentioned a few last time we spoke, but a couple of those closed this week. So
excellent. Congrats.
We're on a trajectory for a number of them. And I think in the meantime, I've even heard Gemini folks were willing to do the full IR migration. So I don't know if we'll be involved there or not, but
yeah.
Should be a good thing if they decide to do.
Yeah, I mean, because the sample process is free, it might be a good idea, Mark, to just connect two systems that you guys are kind of working on, and play around with the system and see if it works.
Yeah.
Or if you have any questions.
Are there any limitations other than the size? 10%?
Let me think it through.
Functionally, you can still set off all in the trial mode, all the same things.
Yeah, everything is the same. I wouldn't even see it as like a trial mode. It's really you're getting the production instance. We're just not migrating all data. So whatever limitations would exist in production migration is what you'll encounter with the sample. There's nothing additional that's added or removed.
Okay, and then we kind of spoke last time about how we want to be able to rinse and repeat this a number of times, right? So we may do several trials, or we'll just start with accounts and contacts and work our way down. The scripts gets bigger, but how does that work with cost-wise if we wanted to do it 8 times into a sandbox or several sandboxes in one final production?
Yeah. So so if you're wanting to do just a sample of, well, let me ask this: is it a single sample you want to do over and over, or are you wanting to do the full migration over and over?
Well, we eventually want to do the full migration, so we need to shake out, the timing and how much downtime the customer may have. So we'll want to do several full mock migrations.
Got it. So we have I don't think I can get to that page right now, at least not quickly, but we have a license that we sell with the migrations. So license will give you access to basically run as many migrations as you need to within whatever the license period is. I think it's 1 month plus. I think it starts at 1 month, I believe. And so with that, you can run it as many times as you want. We're not going to stop you at that point. So let me might take me a second to get to that page. It's what I'm not 100% sure of, and it may need to be a change that the tech team makes on the back end, is if you're going from sandbox to production. I'm not sure if it's as easy as going back and reconnecting a different CRM, or if that will remove the mappings at that point, or if they will on the back end need to switch the login. I'll get an answer on that for you. But I know at least into the sandbox, if you want to do multiple full migrations using the license, you can do as many as you want.
Well, that's a great comment and question. So if I set up a migration from target to source one is a dev sandbox, and then we move into more UAT, and I'm sending it now from the same source to now a full sandbox. And then I go live time, I'm going in production to production. Is that same migration plan that I set up here, this wizard, something I can reuse and redirect to each environment?
Yeah, let me double check on that for you. I'm fairly certain if you change the source CRM, that like from the user interface, that might cause issues. I'm not so sure about the target CRM. I'm on the scenario you're describing. I'm almost certain the team will have to make those changes on the back end for you to change the connection.
The source stays the same. The target
stays the same. Okay. Yeah, I'll double check that for you. Like I said, I still think they would have to do that on the back end, but I'm not 100% positive. So I can get that answer for you.
Okay, yeah, that'd be helpful. I'd hate to have to recreate everything.
Yeah, definitely would want to avoid that. So, yeah, I don't think that would be necessary to recreate everything, but let me just ping them and I'll get you an answer on that. All right, any other questions?
Going through it, I think you hit most of it, although we just kind of touched upon how some things are custom.
Yeah.
Records, flow, deployments, reports, looked at those. Anything additional around contents and documents, emails? I mean, those are usually problematic for migrations, but you've got that.
Yep.
Knowledge articles whooped, it sounds like.
Yep. Knowledge articles we support does require a custom migration, or does require the team to at least add those objects on the back end. But we do support it, and we support custom objects. It again just has to be added on the back end.
And since things like custom metadata is technically viewed as an object, I assume you migrate that in Salesforce as well.
Yes. Yeah.
Actually, I think you hit everything. I think we need to look more at the partner program and pricing and license costs, whatever, but we may start with the sample piece. But we kicked off yesterday another project which has a major data migration, Salesforce to Salesforce. So yeah, I think we want to start using it this week. Is there anything else you'd recommend? I'm just a self-study. I mean, all of us are 20-year industry, 10-year Salesforce architects. So this resonates well. But anything else you'd recommend?
No, I mean, I think, start with the sample. If you go to app.trujay.com, you can sign up for an account and connect your systems there. And I would just start playing with it. And if you run into any trouble, just reach the team here on chat. Or if you want to ping me and send me an email, I'm happy to help as well. But
okay, can multiple users edit the same migration?
No, they would have to use the same user account. So if you want to sign up with like a group user,
fair enough.
Then that's we do every migration is tied to an email address, so that's how it's handled.
Makes sense. Don't have to worry about collisions then.
Yeah.
No, this has been helpful. If we can send some more information, we'll probably get started today, tomorrow at the latest with the sample piece and figure out what pricing and model and everything else makes the most sense.
Excellent. And Mark, I'll have Scott touch base with you on the partner program, and if he hasn't sent you any details yet, we'll get that over to you and start those discussions as well.
Yeah, because we're for sure going to need some custom stuff here and there, but nothing too crazy on this one.
Yeah, sounds good.
Very good.
All
Thanks
right.
so much, Jay.
You're very welcome. Yeah, if any other questions come up, let me know, and I'll follow up with you on the ones I didn't have answers for.
Cool. Can you send me the link for the video so I can get it back to Ben and Patrick?
I sure can.
Drop.
Yeah, absolutely.
Appreciate it, Jay.
Of course. All right.
Bye-bye.
Take care.
Thanks so much. Appreciate it. Bye-bye.
Of course. Bye-bye.